Hello and welcome. This is Martha Hines, and today I am with Dawn Baumann Brunke, who is an animal communicator and an author of many books, wonderful books, including this latest one called Shadow Animals. And today we're going to be talking about your latest book, but really, actually, this conversation I think is going to be, as you say in the book Shadow Animals, the book itself is a quote unquote about animals, but not really actually about the animals. It's really about humans and our
Okay, yeah,
relationship
yeah,
to the shadow.
right.
Um, so I'm really, really excited and honored and happy to be talking with you. Thank you so much for being
Well,
here.
thanks. It's always a pleasure talking with you, Martha. So, hey.
Yeah. Um, so where I was thinking we could start is with this whole concept of shadow and this concept of doing shadow work. Like that's a
Mhm,
term that we hear a lot.
mhm.
Um, and as I was mentioning to you before we started recording, I think it's probably not a coincidence and amazing timing if I look at the astrology of even to the day that we're recording this video, which happens
Yeah,
to be November 8th, 2022. And then when I look ahead at the astrology coming up for 2023, but what's going on today is we happen to have a full a total lunar eclipse. It just happened a few hours ago, with the full moon on the north node of the moon in Taurus, which means that the south node is in Scorpio, with the sun in Scorpio and Venus in the underworld and Mercury all in Scorpio, right? So this eclipse season is really, really highlighting this releasing of shadow.
right,
And
right.
then next year, in 2023, we're going to have Pluto squaring the nodes. So
Mm,
again, that's this massive need on the collective level to integrate the shadow and integrate the gifts of transmutation. That's anyway, that's a really quick one
mhm.
way to interpret that. So I would
Yeah,
love to hear from you. What was your overarching purpose and goal in having this book come through?
yeah.
Um,
Wow, that's a big question. So, I was inspired by this book by my last one, which was all about snake. It was called Awakening the Ancient Power of Snake. And I had a very powerful dream that inspired me to start working with snake. And I did for a couple years, lived with snakes, learned a lot about snakes, snake biology, snake mythology, and kind of did that overarching thing of how we moved from snake as an advisor and guardian, to gods and goddesses, to royalty, to kind of being divorced from snake. In other words, we ourselves had become divorced from the energy that snake holds and offers its teaching to the world, if you will. So snake became, to me, I realized what an incredible shadow animal it was. And I will talk about shadow in just a minute, but I'll just say that, shadow animal teachers, just kind of a general definition, are the ones that show us what we hide from ourselves. They show us our shadow. They help us, see our shadow. And Snake really was that for me. And soon after I finished writing that book, I was going to take a break. I had nice plans, and this book just hit. It was just, it kind of came from within very organically. And I just felt I really wanted to explore more about the shadow. And how could I do that in a way that was intriguing to readers and safe? And I thought animal teachers, that's what Snake is, an animal teacher. And there's so many other what we might call shadow animals, which are animals that people are uncomfortable around, fearful around, phobic around, and kind of my premise of the book is by better understanding those animals that we're fearful around or uncomfortable around, we can learn to be more comfortable and accepting with those aspects of ourselves, right? So it's really looking at the shadow in order to kind of mine our inner psyche and bring up our own shadow and work with it in a safe way that we can integrate those gifts from the shadow, from our own shadow, in a way that allows us to expand, and kind of evolve, and not only individually, but collectively as well. And as you referenced, we're in a collective, powerful time of shadow and of so many shadow elements coming up. And, I mean, I've been working with shadow for a number of years now, very consciously, right? And I think that that's really helpful for everyone to do that, because if you don't work with your shadow, it's going to come up in ways that can be scary, that can be very disorienting, that can cause you to react in ways that aren't very healthy. So should we talk about shadow for a moment?
Yeah.
I'll just define it briefly. It's a psychological term. Carl Jung talked a lot about the shadow, but basically the shadow are all of the pieces of ourselves that we kind of judge or dislike or disown. We kind of push them down in the subconscious. The poet Robert Bly wrote this beautiful little book called The Little Book of the Human Shadow, and he calls it the long bag we drag behind us, And we do this as we learn how to create shadow as little children. Our parents want us to be smart and cheerful and bright, and so all those aspects of self that aren't cheerful and bright and smart kind of get pushed down. We learn early, just kind of subconsciously, to push those things down into ourselves and to see that they're not good or that they're bad in some way. And so that long bag we drag behind us becomes bigger and fuller. We go to school, we go to high school, we go to college, get married. Every body, and every group kind of has judgments about things that are acceptable, things that are good, and things that aren't. And so thus we stuff our shadow into that long bag and drag it behind us. It becomes heavy, If you're interested in knowing what your shadow is, all you have to do is ask yourself what triggers you in the outer world, because that's how shadow kind of sneaks out, right? It gets projected. So, I don't like people who talk a lot, or I don't like know-it-alls, whatever it is. I don't like pompous politicians. Whatever it is that triggers you is going to be related in some way to your own shadow material. Does that make sense?
Absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
So that's why I think shadow work in a way is a little difficult or off-putting for people who aren't used to it, because you're being asked to look at that which you don't really want to look at. Our shadow is the things that we don't really want to see. But the benefit of doing this work is that we become more connected to who we really are. We're not, the more you do work with your shadow, the less triggered you are by it out there, because you're incorporating your shadow, you're integrating it, you're perhaps talking with your shadow selves, and you're realizing their gifts. All of these things that we disowned and put away have gifts for us. They have abilities. And by bringing them up into the light, or let's call it into consciousness, and we can start to integrate them, we just become a wider, more expansive person, and more is available to us within ourselves.
Yeah. One story or myth that I've been thinking about a fair amount in the last few weeks with the shadow is the myth of Inanna, going through the layers of the underworld until she's stripping off every layer of identity, and she gets to the bottom of the underworld. And something that dawned on me a couple of months ago as I was feeling into that, and actually when I was having a conversation with two astrologers who work with the Venus cycle, is it dawned on me, oh wait, so when we get to the bottom of the underworld of ourselves, of our psyche, or whatever it is, what's there? Like what's that ultimate goal? And I'm curious how this resonates or doesn't for you. What I felt suddenly was, oh, when we strip away every layer and go layer by layer down into the underworld, maybe what happens is we get to the light, like we get to the purity of who we actually are essence level. And I noticed in your book, you often referenced I don't know if you would call it the ultimate goal, but you reference in several places the experience of awakening.
Mhm.
I'm curious because for me, that experience of going down in layer by layer through the underworld and getting to the light is a version of awakening.
Yeah.
So I'm curious what you resonate with in that or don't.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I really like that metaphor. I like that. I like that idea. And I think of it similarly as, you know, confronting our shadow, which is necessarily kind of darkish, right? And we're not sure about it. We don't really know what it is. But by doing that, we come to learn what it is. So we're taking in a piece of ourselves. We see it ever more clearly, ever more brightly. Huh? And then it becomes integrated. So I think of awakening with the shadow as kind of, yeah, integrating that. And but I do like the idea of going down. You do go down, and then there's the light because you're facing your fears, huh? You're facing it. Let's remember, we create our own shadow, huh? It's not something out there. That's why I say there's really no such thing as a shadow animal. We create those. You know, for some people, a spider's a shadow animal. For some people, a cat's a shadow animal. So it's whatever those qualities that or those fears we have in ourselves that we project out there onto that particular animal. Right. So by going down in and facing our fears or finding those traumatized selves, those forgotten selves, the selves we've judged, and seeing them with new eyes, I think we do see them in lighter ways. And we realize, oh, that's nothing to fear, really. You know, we have a conversation with ourselves at those deeper levels. Yeah. Yeah. And it can be so, you know, let me just bring in a short dream that I have in one of the chapters, because it really speaks to me of how we can work with shadow animals. I had a dream when I was working on my nightmare chapter about going to this special stable, right? It was a stable for kind of deformed animals. And I went in and there was this white pony, and it looked like it had been starved and abused. It was just really pathetic looking. And I kind of, you know, I had that feeling of, I don't even know if I want to see that, but I was drawn towards it in the dream. And as I moved towards it, I felt the pony's energy of, how can you even come near me? So it felt so shameful and so undeserving of love. And when it kind of showed that vulnerability, I went towards it more and embraced it. And there was such a deep love between this pony, this pony self, this shadow self of mine in the dream. And that's what the healing was. The healing was an embrace. And when I woke up, you know, I can't even tell you what that shadow self is exactly. I can't define it. I don't know if I need to define it, but it was a part of shadow that had been, you know, traumatized in some way and was feeling just very unloved and very vulnerable and shameful. And just again, with that simple embrace. And I want to emphasize the pony was embracing back, you know, with its energy field, It didn't have with its hooves, but just there was just this sense of deep connection. And so that to me is what you speak of as awakening, of where we have this deep connection, this deep love, and this you know, rebirth kind of the shadow into the light, into who we are, and a reclaiming of our shadow in a powerful way. Yeah.
Because I can just relate in my own life and in my own self that, of course, I think for most of us, most of the time, if something difficult arises or if anxiety comes up or whatever it is, what do I want to do? I want to get away from that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. And then what happens? It doesn't go away.
Comes back again in another form, right? That's
Yeah.
another time. Yeah, it just keeps
Right.
coming back. And that
Yeah.
is one of the benefits of when you start to do this work consciously. I mean, if something bothers me in the outside world, I'm all of a sudden writing it down. Where am I feeling it? Why am I feeling this? You know, what does it feel like? And kind of like tapping into past experiences when I felt similar. And it sounds weird, but it does become fun to work with your shadow because you know that you're going to reclaim something that has a lot of value for you. Yeah.
And even on a very basic level, again, I'm just speaking from my own experience, but having been a therapist for a long time, also
Mhm.
I can speak about other people's too. Anyway, in myself, I notice myself losing a lot of energy if I'm trying to like brace against something, right? It's like,
Yeah.
so I can imagine not only it being fun, but also actually
Yeah.
so relieving,
Yeah.
and like just weights can be lifted, or any number of things, like I can imagine breathing more easily even.
I
And
think you're totally right, because the more we resist our shadow, the more disconnected we remain, and by choosing to go into it, yeah, I think we get nourished. No, Robert Bly uses that word in his book. We get nourished by our shadow, and he calls it eating it. We eat our shadow, huh? Meaning we take it in and we digest it and we ingest it. And Carl Jung, when he was talking about the shadow, said, the real danger isn't meeting your shadow. The real danger is refusing to meet your shadow.
wow.
Because you really do. You stay so disconnected, so triggered by things rather than, kind of going, well, what is that? So shadow work is also, it's about being curious about ourselves. It's about, being a little bit of a detective, being creative. How can I work with this energy that I don't want to see? So it is nourishing. I totally agree with him about that. It's very nourishing. Yeah.
Yeah.
And think if we did this worldwide. I mean, as we redeem our collective shadow, wow. We wouldn't be censoring people. We wouldn't be, divided. We wouldn't be othering on each other. We'd be opening our hearts, huh? And really having some more compassion, I think, for ourselves and others.
Yeah.
Yeah.
um yeah, and I'm having so many thoughts going in many different directions, so I'll just I'll
Sure.
come to center with one of them and see where it takes us. One thing I said to you before we started recording also was that I noticed as I was reading your book that my nervous system relaxed. It
Mm.
was such a relaxing, relieving experience just being with your book. And I can attribute that to various things. I think it's the presence of you coming through the book. I think it's any number of things, but I am wondering also the presence of the animals themselves,
Yeah.
is
Yeah.
perhaps a really calming,
Yeah.
relieving thing for our nervous system, as you talk
I
about in the
think
book even. Yeah.
yeah, that's so true. And I mean, humans, we've connected with animals, just forever, really. Animals who are our teachers in the very early days. Animals are gods. And goddesses we pictured as animals or with animal characteristics because we saw wisdom in the natural world, huh? In animals, and we learned different things from different animals. How to see clearly from an eagle, how to play with life as a fox, how to burrow through the earth, as a snake or a worm, something. So we learned a lot. And I think animals in general, I mean, and I'm pulling this from my animal communication work. I think they're very supportive. They really want to help their humans,
Mm.
and protective, to share wisdom, to grow with us. So there is something very comforting, I think, about most animals. And when you form a relationship with an animal teacher, especially a shadow animal teacher, you're, I think, committing yourself to going deeper. And I think when we do that, animals sense that about us. Okay, we can do the deeper work here. We can do, it's not just a superficial thing. It's a deepening process, huh?
Mm.
But in ourselves and in our relationship with that animal, or that animal
Wow.
species. Yeah.
And it also feels to me like connecting with the animals is one avenue for us to kind of relax into and connect back with the earth. So
Yeah.
again, this brings me back to the current astrology. We have the north node of the moon in Taurus, right? With Taurus being a sign associated with the earth. And we have this full moon eclipse that happened a few hours ago
Right. Right.
was a full moon in Taurus on the north node of the moon, conjunct Uranus in Taurus. So it's like all these energies bringing us, both helping us release the shadow of that stuff in Scorpio, but then bringing us back to the simplicity of our relationship with Earth. And it just even in my body and our relationship with our body and our body as an Earth thing. So it feels to me like animals are maybe an intermediary in a sense of, we don't have to completely remember what it is to commune with a plant, which is, I think, something humans naturally do. And maybe most of us have forgotten how to do that. It's a little bit easier in our current culture to think about communing with a dog or a cat or even a bird or a whatever. But they, I think, for me at least, I'm guessing for other people, help remind us we are animals too. We are Earth bodies. We literally are, you know.
Yeah, I think that's such a well taken point, is that animals, I think in general, they're very at home in their bodies and in connection with the earth. That is a great teaching animals, almost all animals offer to us, you know. And again, think of what shadow is. It's what we judge in ourselves. It's what we put away, you know, it's what we don't want to look at. So we're necessarily disconnecting from a part of ourselves. So by working with animals who are at home in their body, they're kind of bringing it up, you know, they're helping us bring those things back into balance and not judge them so much, you know. Cat's gonna chase mouse. That's just how it is. Makes no apology for it, right? It's just, you know, so they're very okay with themselves and with what they do. They're not judging and not, and they're very at home with the earth. You know, most animals, when they're ill, they just really want to lay on the earth and soak that up, you know. And so you're right. I think that's a really good point, that animals point us towards home, both on our planet and in ourselves, in our being. Yeah.
Yeah. So in your book, you discuss huge number of animals. Do you want to now maybe just list them, or list the ones you can remember off the top of your head, and I can help you if I remember
Well,
something?
yeah, I actually I only do 13, but you know, 13 chapters. Some of them have animal groups in them. So like there's the cats, there's domestic cats as well as big cats. There's a chapter on dog, as well as coyote and wolf and fox. Those are animals that you would think, oh, are they really shadow? But they are. For some people are afraid of dogs. Some people don't like cats, you know. And then I kind of look at some traditional shadow animals, snake, rat, bat, things like that. I have a chapter on goat, which is a really interesting one because it pulls in Pan, you know, the original kind of goat god, and how Pan became really through a number of centuries our modern day devil. And wow, we did that to goat. When goat gives us so much, what kind of trip is that? It's all about shadow, right? Let's see, there's a really fun chapter on the deep. So the kraken and squids and things. I have a chapter on insects, that which swarms, stings, bites, burrows, and invades. And insects are really, in general, you know, a really good, well, they bug us. They're bugs. They bug us, right? You know, we have some insects we love, butterflies and fireflies, right? And then other insects that really give us the, as one gentleman who was interviewing, they give me the creepy crawly. So, you know, that's a good shadow, a group collective shadow. And there is something about it being invaded by insects that can be very scary. You know, if you ever had a cockroach invasion or termite invasion, it's, so those bring up things. I'm trying to think what else I have in here. Birds. What else? Horse. We have the nightmare chapter.
Yeah, and I love that. Nightmare.
Nightmare. Right.
Yeah.
I think that's about it. Oh, frog, metamorphosis, snake, and then the most dangerous animal of all. Want to guess what that is?
Human. Yes.
We are animals, like you said to me before the thing. You know, we are animals, and yeah, we have a lot of shadow around ourselves for sure.
Yeah. And then, so one of the things that's so wonderful about many wonderful things about this book, one of the many wonderful things is that in each chapter, you give some very practical exercises for taking us more and more deeply into relationship with our shadow.
Yeah.
And so I'm thinking of an experience that I had in the last few days, and I'm wondering if we could just briefly talk about that as, an example of a shadow, quote unquote, shadow animal experience, and then
Sure.
maybe how you would suggest a person would work with, because we have these experiences all the time
Yeah.
in various ways. But I, a few days ago, was on my normal walk. I live 15 minutes from the Pacific Ocean, and I live across the street from a monarch butterfly preserve. It's like a
Oh,
huge
wow.
area. It's so beautiful.
Yeah.
And so I walk. The butterfly preserve is a huge grove of eucalyptus trees, and then there's bluffs on cliffs overlooking the ocean,
Hmm.
and then I can walk down to the ocean from there. So that's my daily kind of routine. And I was walking there 2 days in a row on right before dusk. So the sun was setting. And this one day, it was a pretty intense day. I can't remember even exactly why, but it was either a falcon or a hawk, and I'm not sure which. It came and it kept swooping down. So it would be up in a tree, and then it kept swooping down right past my body. And this has never happened to me. And I've taken this walk, every day for however many years. And there's always falcons and hawks and all kinds of amazing birds out there. But so this bird just kept swooping down right past my body, and then it would fly back up into a tree, and then it would swoop down again. And then it would, it did it maybe 3 or 4 times. I was like, wow, what in the world is going on? And then the next day, I was on the same walk, also as it was getting dark, and there was an owl in the tree who did the exact same thing. And again, I've seen owls a bunch of times. I mean, not super often. It's very, very special when I do. I love these owls. But I've never had an owl swoop down at me. Okay, so 2 days in a row, 2 different types of birds also in the exact same place on that path where I walk, the exact same spot. They were swooping down, right? So I'm sitting here reading your book, and I'm going, yeah, something was going on with that. So if somebody comes to you, or something like that happens in your own life, what are some examples that you could say for people, how do we work with that kind of?
Yeah, so I'll just give a little 5-prong thing that I do, because it doesn't sound like you were necessarily afraid, right? You were just
I
realizing.
was at first, maybe, but then I just thought it was amazing and
Yeah.
curious.
So one thing that I do is, and I love dreams. I like working with dreams. So I kind of work it with shadow animals in the same way. So I would definitely my first order of business would be to write down what happened, where I was, what time it was, how did I feel in my body? Okay, I had that fear, but then I felt like, oh, maybe it's showing me something. I would just write down all of the feelings and thoughts I had. And I think that's really helpful because, we do forget as days goes on. So if you do it, what you're doing is you're taking that experience, you're making it very concrete, and you're writing it down on paper and making a record for yourself. And I think at some level, you're also, telling your animal guides, your animal teachers, perhaps the birds, or your deeper self, I am serious about this. I do want to learn more, rather than just kind of saying, oh, wasn't that weird? That's a kind of a superficial thing, right? But by writing it down, we bring ourselves into the moment. And then I love research. So that's me. I would like to look up the biology of those 2 birds. I'd like to learn about their special habits. Maybe what is their teaching. I would write down my thoughts first about it, what I know about them, and then maybe do a little more research about where they live and whatever. What I'm doing, I'm not writing an essay. I'm just looking at what speaks to me, either what scares me or what fascinates me. What speaks to me in my deeper self about my research about these. And then as a addition to that, I'd also look at myths and legends about these birds. What do they do? Birds are often about kind of bringing messages from the heaven, from the divine to us. And both of those birds, I think, have to do with message bringing. They're bringing air, sky, heaven energy onto earth. And they're swooping in front of you. So there's something about that motion that I'd want to be looking at and I'd want to be asking. And then I would go into questions, how does this speak to me? What is this swooping about? What's swooping in my life right now? In other words, what in my waking life, what else is swooping in front of me? Job opportunities, relationships, I don't know. Are things going too fast in my life? Am I not able to pay attention? Maybe it's a message to slow down. Then again, maybe it's a message to kind of move a little bit quicker through things. So it's going to be individual, it's going to be individual what it means to you. And so ask interesting questions. That's what I call it. Ask interesting questions. And then finally, kind of as a little way to again make it a little bit more concrete, is how can I honor these animals? Maybe there's a feather I find. Maybe I just want to take a picture from the internet, make it small and put it on my computer. Maybe I have a bird or an owl statue that I want to put, in my kitchen or by my desk somewhere where I'm kind of bringing that in, and I'm reminding myself, this animal came into my life for a reason. What's the message here? And then I would let that simmer, a little bit, and you're going to get, things will come up because now you've done a number of things and you're kind of, asking for help perhaps. Maybe meditate with those animals. Maybe you have dreams about them. Maybe you daydream about them. If you're a communicator, maybe you talk to those animals. So there's so many different creative things you can do. And I would just be open to what inspires me, what speaks to me at a deeper level. And is there something here that wants to be known within myself? That's what I mean about interesting questions. What is it that wants to come up, and how can I honor that? And sometimes that's a stepping stone to another, encounter or a deepening of that process. Yeah. So that's how I do it. I like to dance lightly with the animal, but at the same time, be serious about my intentions of really wanting to learn more and to deepen myself.
Wonderful. Yes, I love all of that. And I know in my own life, I have this very powerful, strong relationship with the earth and a very strong, powerful relationship with spirit or source. And one thing that, reading this book, and also you and I had an interview several months ago about your snake book, both of them have kind of reminded me how crucial it is that, again, I'm speaking for myself, but maybe other people can relate to this. I'm not only earth and spirit, I'm also animal.
Yeah.
Literally, and there's this whole sort of middle realm of magic and wisdom that I think I need to remember and be a part of and be in active communion and relationship and community with. Yeah. It's a huge gift to me. Yeah. So thank you for that and your work. Yeah. Is there any other thing about your book that you feel called to say or talk about?
No, I think it's it's a kind of an experiential book, right? So go at your own pace. It opens to, we talked about there was different exercises. Each of them are kind of inspired by the chapter, but even if your particular shadow animal isn't included, all those exercises apply to different animals. So it's really, you can be very creative with it yourself, with the exercises and with, learning how to work with either your animal teacher or your shadow animal, and getting to know your shadow self in a way that is meaningful and bears fruits for you, bears riches. Yeah.
And we weren't planning it this way, but today, the day we are recording this video happens to be the day you're launching this book, right?
It is, I know, yeah. It got shifted from the publisher and yeah, and then an astrologer friend said, oh, it's a total lunar eclipse. That's a big
Yeah.
deal about
Yes, it
shadow,
is.
right?
It's a huge deal. It's gigantic and it's so perfect.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm assuming anybody who's interested can find it where?
Amazon, Barnes and Noble, bookstores. If you go to my website, it's animalvoices.net. And
Mhm.
so there's direct links to different places. And there's several chapters that you could read online if you're, I like to read before I buy because I want to make sure it's something I want to read, right? There's only so much time. So
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, I definitely recommend it. Highly, highly beyond recommend it,
Oh, thanks,
for
Mark.
so many reasons. And then what about other things you're doing in the world? I actually don't even know. Do you offer classes? Do you offer one-on-one mentoring still? What else do you
Yeah,
want to share
well, I
about?
do animal communication mentoring. I am going to be doing a class, an online class come January or February. Somebody else is kind of setting that up. Mostly my days are, part of my days are for writing. I'm working on a novel, so that's really fun right now. And then I do animal communication sessions and tarot readings. So I work with a lot of people all over the world on Zoom. And yeah.
Beautiful. And is the best way to reach you through your website or something
Yeah,
else?
website animalvoices.net, and there's email links there, and that's the best way to reach me. Yes. Please don't text, just email me.
What'd you say?
I like email.
Oh, yeah.
Some people like to text, and I'm like,
Oh.
oh.
Yes. Wonderful. Okay. Well, thank you so much for the book, for your work, for your presence on the planet. And
Thanks, Martha. And
yeah.
same to you. I love talking with you. You're so genuine, and it's just really a pleasure to speak with you.
Well, it's mutual, completely, totally. So to be continued another time, I'm sure.
Okay. Very
Thank
good.
you.
Uh,